But still, just because apparently getting a lot of views that are not wigglers, which I'm happy. I'm like, ooh, new people.
Oh, that's super, super exciting. Yeah.
I've had trolls.
Yeah,
so.
I've been fooling around with that.
Shorts.
Yeah.
Is it working?
Yeah, it is. It's yeah, I haven't had anything blow up, obviously, but it is working.
Can I steal that video and try it on my side just once? Everything else is for
yeah,
you.
you can. No, you can do it.
Oh, okay. Of course, I'm gonna ask permission first. That's
well, yeah.
a no-brainer. Let's just let me see.
But I think you could do like really quick like clips of your
TAS talks. Yeah.
Yeah, just like those super funny bits, I think that would like be a good like just 15 seconds, like just like 3 quick clips or whatever, and it'll draw people to your channel.
I think I will start. I think I can do that with the TAS talk questions.
Yeah.
I need to say the longer ones which I want to include a video. Yeah. Anyway,
all right, are we going?
We're just waiting for people to join in. I see. Like I love seeing it's like everyone's going through the gates. Slowly getting to your seats, everyone. Have we got all our pizzas ready?
Got your notepads.
Yes.
Pencils.
Your drinks, your beverages. You're comfortable. Just trying to also then get to my live channel because YouTube, for some reason, I feel like they change things without telling us. Boop. All right.
Beans.
It's always beans. Hello. Okay, so I think a lot of people were not aware if we're doing this right now. So maybe just before we continue, it might be worthwhile posting it in our channels because I got a lot of DMs asking, "Is this happening?" Because
yeah, I posted. Well, I posted in mine and then I also did a reminder over Instagram, but
yes,
my followers, they're all here, so they got the memo. So this is all you, JJ.
It's just me. Yes, just for everyone, we do this every week, so in future reference. But first of all, guys,
but we did change the time. We did mess with people by changing the time.
And well, we didn't change the time. The rest of the world did.
That's true.
We technically stayed on the exact same time on my side.
I am not on the daylight savings time like changing train. So this is not my fault. If it were up to me, it would be the same every single day.
It's an old system that is broken. But I think we have already discussed that we might move it over to daylight saving time, so everyone knows that's going to happen at 11 a.m. Joey time. But that's something that we'll decide with KP. But
yeah,
the world changed. We didn't.
Welcome in, everybody.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, welcome everybody.
Oh, JJ, I've got a comment over here from Finn who just wanted to let JJ know that his voice of Joey on my short was absolutely phenomenal. Perfection.
Oh, thank you. Please watch the TAS talks as well.
I also had somebody say that it put closed captioning on it and it thought it was Spanish.
Yes, it's all over the apparently that happens with my pup dates as well. I think it was a Jess pod because it sounds like yes.
Yes. And then at the end, when you say I don't really know, it changes to amarillo. Amarillo, which means yellow in Spanish.
Apparently I'm Spanish, but I also think it's because of this voice. I don't know that. I think I need to write a nasty letter to YouTube like, how dare you think that Spanish people all have a voice like this? Like, orale vato. That's so wrong.
It is a little racist, isn't it?
Yes, but but thank you for that compliment. So let's get started. Today we're going to be covering okay, please, KP, before I embarrass myself, how do you pronounce that term? Cetaceans? Cetaceans. I just need to get that right because I went through many different versions. Okay, so we're going to be covering the topic of cetaceans. Part of it's going to be about cetaceans in captivity. So for that, I need to mention something very quickly and then we'll move on. So for those who are aware or are new to this topic, we need to make a few things very clear. The topic of cetaceans in captivity is one of controversy and great debate. Okay, so there are parties and organizations on both sides who are both in favor and against the activism surrounding this issue. We want to first openly communicate that on both sides there are valid arguments and tangible facts supporting both factors. However, there is also a massive amount of misinformation that attempts to create a blanket that encapsulates one solution irrespective of context. Context is king. The situation is depending on the circumstance. Therefore, the great cetacean debate must be one that is treated surgically depending on the events, and that not...
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
JJ.
JJ?
He was just getting to the good part. He still thinks he's talking.
Of course that would happen. Hello?
There you go, you're back.
Of course, while I'm busy going through this thing, this decides to cut off.
I know, I was like, oh no, he was just getting to it.
Yes, I don't know where I left off, by the way. At what point did I cut off? But okay.
You were right at like it's context is important.
Yes.
That sort of thing.
So that's right. So just to round that off very quickly is that we must note that during this AMA, certain organizations might be mentioned on both sides. But that is whether it's to do with an event or a statement that occurred. But we are not here in any capacity to defame or discredit any organization, as many of them have grown and evolved in many different ways. We are not here to also invalidate anyone's opinion on the topic. So you may already come here with an opinion. We are simply here to add value to your opinion so that your opinion can be one backed by many sources of information. The knowledge shared here today is from an educated place, as we know, but we must know it's from KP's own experience in the matter and her years in the sector, so you can then add it to your conversation. Please don't treat this as a final gospel, but only as information backed by particular education and experience. So we ask that when you leave this AMA, it is to use this as another source of information, which we encourage you to investigate further. Let this not be your final point of knowledge. We also ask that the chat remain one of courtesy and not of opinion in terms of making statements based on emotion. You're welcome to continue the discussion on our Discords, but of course, keep within the rules. Okay, so now that we got that disclaimer out the way, because this is a very touchy subject, please, I know Rieha has some questions. Welcome, KP. Welcome, Rieha. We're going to be talking about the fish that are in my background as well. Not the fish. The mammals. Jason, the mammals. The mammals, not the fish. Remember, mammals flat tail.
So offended when you call them
fish,
the fish.
Yes, the fish are vertical tails. Mammals are horizontal.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Oh, hello, Finn. I see you jumped on. Hello, Jedital. Welcome to the chat. Thank you, Finn Rizzle. So, Ray, you've got most of the questions, but please ask questions in touch. Do you want to hit us off with the first question of this very nice topic?
So, the first question comes from Beans.
Oh, we're going there already.
Originally, yes, we need to get this out of the way.
Okay.
Because Beans definitely messed with us in the worst way. So, this first question is, why are their penises so weird?
Okay. So, I don't really know. I guess Beans. God damn it, Beans.
I'm sure they would think our penises are weird, but carry on.
Yeah. I mean, like all penises are made to like, like there's a certain level of. I mean, everybody knows like ducks have like the corkscrew penises, and like there's a certain level of that going on. Interesting thing about like every single one of them has like different kind of anatomy, and one of the animals that I worked with is the harbor porpoise. And they actually have penises that are literally about a third of the length of their body.
What?
And they have the largest testicle to body ratio of any, or I guess, testicle to body ratio of any cetacean in the world. So so that's pretty interesting. As far as why their penises have particular shapes, I don't know. I am not a whale dolphin penis expert, but that kind of sums up my whale dolphin porpoise reproductive sort of knowledge. But yeah, I mean, they obviously have internal testicles and internal penises, and so
is that to keep them aerodynamic in the water, so to speak?
Well, that, and also to keep them, keep it warm. Like, you don't really want your penis exposed to the water all the time. But if you are wondering how to tell the difference between a male and a female cetacean, which are all whales, dolphins, and porpoises, they're all included in that like cetacean category.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at their underside, the females are going to have what I call like a division sign. So they've got their genital slit, and then they have 2 mammary glands on either side of it. So it looks like a little division symbol. And the males are going to have what almost looks like an exclamation mark. So they just have one really long slit, and then they have basically their anus is like down here. So it looks like an exclamation mark. So exclamation mark for boys, division sign for girls. I don't know why their penises look like that, Beans.
And
I don't know.
On that note, punctuation in mathematics has forever changed in everyone's life.
yeah, and now you'll never look at that the same.
But I'm just speculating here, but I'm quite sure the penises on that, nice way to start the topic off, but they're probably shaped in that way, similar to how docking stations in space are very weirdly shaped. It's like you're doing this while you're floating.
It's a docking station, yeah, for sure.
Can I follow that up with a question? Is it true that whales' penises are called a dork? So when you're calling someone a dork, you're basically calling them a whale penis?
Oh, I've never heard of that.
I need to.
That maybe is a question for the Google. I've never heard of that before, but I hope so.
Because I don't know where I got that from. I'm like, but next time I'll be like, you just called me a whale genitalia. Someone else can do the research for us. Okay, but let's very quickly move on to the next question. When I did the disclaimer, I didn't mean it that because we were going to talk about this controversial subject.
yeah. Well, there we go. We're hitting it off with a bang.
Yes, it is a whale penis.
Oh, yes, so that is true.
To this, it's referring to that.
Now we learned something new, kids. And let's not use the phrasing starting this off with a bang, especially off the topic.
This is according to Wikipedia, so...
Next question.
Moving on. We've started off light. It only gets better.
Okay, the next question is much more subtle of how intelligent are they?
Yeah, so this is a question. Obviously, that's a super broad question. It doesn't have a distinct answer, but this is a question that we often get, or that I've often had, because there's kind of this conception that, or perception that whales and dolphins are very, very smart animals. And intelligence is so hard to measure. It's even hard to measure in humans.
Oh, that's true.
So dolphins, I think what we see and what we're thinking of when we think of that is that dolphins have a lot of human characteristics in their cognitive abilities. But I don't know that this necessarily means that they're more intelligent than other animals. People are often asking, how much easier is it to train a dolphin than it is to train a dog? Well, it's not, is the short answer. They're just different animals. So, I feel like the animals are exactly as smart as they need to be for whatever, evolutionary purpose they have. So the sociability, I think, of dolphins and whales is what really sort of draws us to them as a human race and makes us think these guys are super intelligent. But that doesn't mean that other animals aren't intelligent. They're just maybe not as social as we are. But I've worked with not so smart dolphins. So I think that it's it's very personal. I also have some friends who I would maybe say are not that high on the intelligence scale.
Yes.
And so it's all very, very personalized. Dolphins are very social animals, and that's something that you always consider when working with them and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't like saying they're more intelligent than other animals because I feel like it's such a relative term. But they definitely are social, and they definitely have really advanced social, situations that they deal with. So that's pretty cool. But I mean, like other animals, you can literally train anything with a brain stem. And it's just a matter of, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, that makes things a little bit different. But so that's a really broad question. I mean, they're definitely very complex socially, but I think as humans we've also maybe amped them up a little bit more than there's a lot of people who put really human characteristics to them, and I think that in the end, it's all relative, just like everything we always talk about on this show.
Yes. I blame Flipper for that, by the way. It made dolphins
Yeah, no,
human.
it's totally the TV's. It
Always
100%
TV.
is TV's fault. Yeah.
But is it also possibly that the intelligence is hyped up based on the fact that they have a sophisticated means of communication? And how sophisticated is that communication anyway?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Any social animal needs a very, a very complex communication system, and so that's what you see when you look at them, and it's so subtle. A lot of times, dolphins don't have facial expressions, right? So
Yes.
So you're looking at like just the tiniest little body language changes, or Helen at the aquarium, like I can tell a lot based on how wide she's holding her eyes open, and things are as subtle as that. And so imagine, like, if I can read that, what a dolphin can read.
Yes.
is far more. Obviously, they do have vocalizing communication, which is super interesting. And there have been studies that have shown, a study that we did at the aquarium with beluga whales showed that they, like mothers, essentially have a unique call for their calves and vice versa. So it's what would essentially be considered a name. So each of their calves has a unique call that the mother will use for it, that lets that calf know
wow.
she's talking to it.
So it actually has a name, basically.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, that is the anthropomorphic way to put it, but it's essentially the same thing. That they have a unique, like each animal has a unique call that its mother uses for it. So yeah, I mean, so obviously that's incredibly complex social stuff going on, and some of it we will never understand either, which is kind of cool, but also kind of scary. So yeah, I mean, there's so much that goes on with them. They absolutely are intelligent animals. But as far as like, it's just, I don't like to make comparisons with other animals, I guess is what I'm saying, because like I said, I've worked with dolphins that I think are smarter than some of my friends. We as humans like to think that humans are the most intelligent species on Earth, and I don't necessarily think that's true. So.
No, just because we can put on pants and do taxes. That doesn't make us
exactly.
intelligent. And if
I
anything,
can't do my own taxes. I don't know about you.
If anything, that's seems to be a hindrance. We can't accept each other as we are. It's like, that's not intelligence at all.
Right.
Let's try to go through Rhea's questions, because I have some questions here as well popping up, more about what we were going to cover. But I know there's a lot of actual questions about the creatures first. I think we should get those out the way first.
Sure.
So go ahead, Rheha.
Hey, sorry, I'm just like editing some stuff here. So the next question we had is, how do you go about sedating a cetacean? They are conscious breathers.
Yeah, I love this question. So obviously, whoever wrote this has a base knowledge of cetaceans. So yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, they are what's called conscious breathers, which means that they actually physically have to think about every single breath that they take. Because, as humans, we just breathe. Nobody's really thinking about it very often. But they have to physically make it happen every single time, which is a very good adaptation if you live underwater. Obviously, they don't want to accidentally inhale water.
Yes.
And so traditionally, sedating these animals has been very, very difficult, because if you sedate them, then they don't breathe, because it is a conscious effort that they make, and all of your conscious efforts pretty much fly out the window when you've been sedated. But recently there have been some advances in this type of science. They've been doing it a little bit with bottlenose dolphins, which is what we're watching on my stream right now. This is actually the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. If anybody's familiar with Winter, this is where Winter lives. So they've been doing it a little bit with bottlenose dolphins, but at the Vancouver Aquarium, where I work, we actually were there for the first time that they were able to do a gastric surgery on a Pacific white-sided dolphin using anesthesia. So basically what happens is you have to intubate them. And this is where it gets a little bit trickier even still. So you would normally do this with humans as well. But in dolphins, their throat through their mouth does not lead to their airway. They have what's called a goose beak that separates their essentially like their esophagus from their trachea. So they do not meet, they do not go to the same place. So dolphins cannot breathe out of their mouths. So you have to go into their throat and move the goose beak. You essentially shift the goose beak so that you can then go up a different pathway into the trachea and then intubate that way. And so they were able to successfully do this. At the Vancouver Aquarium, I was able to actually be there and watch that surgery, and the dolphin did survive the surgery. She did unfortunately pass away from her condition a while later on, but it was an advancement in that field that has never been made before. So essentially, yes, it is possible. It is still very difficult, but veterinarians and facilities are learning more and more and more every single day, and obviously that type of stuff is only possible because of having animals under human care. Otherwise, nobody would still know how to do any of that stuff. So that's pretty interesting stuff, but that's a really good question, and it is something that's definitely still kind of in the process of being perfected with these guys.
So as you mentioned, this is actually something very, very recent, and obviously they've had to be transported before. So how did they actually do that beforehand?
The transport?
Yes, or...
So in transporting animals, we do not anesthetize them.
Oh, okay.
So they are awake. They are awake for transports. But the anesthesia would be used only if you absolutely need to and for surgical purposes, pretty much. So when you're transporting an animal, like a whale or a dolphin or porpoise, they go into a sling,
yes.
which is kind of what it sounds like. It looks like a little hammock for a dolphin. And then they sit in that, and then they sit in a box of usually nice warm water for the duration of their move, and it's usually very, very fast. They get their own chartered planes, they get police escorts to and from, and then they also might get a little just a little something like a little anxiety, or like something you would take when you go on
when
a
you're
plane,
awake.
But they are completely awake, completely conscious, like completely aware of their surroundings the whole time that they're doing transports like that.
Interesting.
And I have a question over here. Somebody's asking. Sorry if I'm taking your role here, Rieha, but I just wanted to get to it because it is kind of related. Is somebody asking, how do dolphins sleep then? And that's such a cool question. Some of you might know it, but it is essentially they don't really sleep in the traditional sense of the word. They can rest half of their brains at a time. So their brains are not connected in the same way that yours or mine are. And you can actually see this physically. If you Google a dolphin brain, you'll notice that the two hemispheres are not as connected as a human brain are.
Oh, wow.
So what they'll actually do is they'll rest half of their brain, and the other half is still functioning completely normally. Sometimes you can't even notice that this is happening with a dolphin. They might just be like, with all the dolphins that I've known, they usually just kind of are doing some really nice, relaxed, slow swimming, or even just like sitting in one place for a little period of time, but just some nice relaxed movements. But honestly, like out in the ocean, they would be keeping moving because they don't want to sit still. That's a recipe for getting eaten by something. And so you can almost not tell when a whale or a dolphin is sleeping. The only way you can tell is by hooking up is it an ECG or an EKG? I always forget. The one that goes to your brain to measure
EKG.
like electronic electronic signals in your brain, and that's the only way that anyone's ever really been able to tell, but of course you can't just hook them up like constantly, so nobody so that's how whales and dolphins sleep. So that keeps half of their brain functioning, and that keeps them breathing.
Oh,
but
wow.
It's a great question.
I know some people that use half their brain, but I don't think it's a skill.
No, it's more of a hindrance in the
Next time I call them dolphin, they're going to be like, "Thank you?" Question mark.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, Rhea.
Yeah. So we had a question in chat actually that was relating to the sedation of them. This one is, how is the intubation done? Is it fiber optics used or another method?
So keep in mind, I've only seen this done once. So which is far more than like that. I'm probably the only person you'll ever meet who's ever seen it done. So, but still, I've only seen it done once. I'm not like and I wasn't performing it by any means. But I believe it was mostly by feel. So you can actually, this sounds really gross, but you can actually reach into their mouths and you can manually move the goose beak. So then you're moving it, and these people who are doing this, they know how to do this, right? Like, this is their thing. There are incredibly specialized people in this field, and when we did this process, we had basically called everybody from around the world who had ever done this, and they were flown in to do this procedure for us. So yeah, you just basically manually move the goose beak, and then you can insert a tube that way directly into the lungs, into the airway. So I was on the opposite side of the head for this procedure, so I didn't get to maybe see as much of that as I would have liked. But yeah, as far as I know, that's how that procedure is done. There wasn't really there's not like a camera or anything like that. Although we do use endoscopes for a wide variety of awesome procedures at aquariums and zoos. But I don't think there was one used in this case. But yeah.
Okay. Some interesting stuff we're learning here.
Yeah, it's so different than the things we normally cover, right?
Yes.
So,
Ray, got more question?
Yep. Our next question on the list is, what is the largest whale that has been at the aquarium?
At the Vancouver Aquarium? So, kind of a trick question. By the truest sense of the word, the beluga whales, probably. But that's just because killer whales are not actually whales. They are dolphins.
Yes.
So we've talked about this a little bit before, but
Yes.
killer whales are the Vancouver Aquarium did house killer whales up until 2001. And so if that's what you mean, then yes, killer whales. However, killer whales are actually the largest species of dolphin in the world. So technically, they're a dolphin species, and beluga whales are actually a true whale. So I never worked with the killer whales. They're like my dream animal. I would love to, but I was not. How old was I then? I don't know. 13. So I was not around when that happened, but I worked with a false killer whale, beluga whales, Pacific white-sided dolphins, and harbor porpoises. So if you have specific species questions, those would be my expertise. But yeah, so the killer whales were there up until 2001.
Yes. Just quickly answer a question. Yes, killer whales are orcas. Panda dolphins. Basically.
Yeah.
Just very quickly in covering the killer whales and stuff like that. Gosh, I lost it. I lost the question. Let me go back. Sorry, it's on Discord. Yes. Okay. In terms of killer whales and things like that, is there any particular reason why they stopped bringing in killer whales to Vancouver Aquarium? I think that would cover most of the aquariums, though.
Yeah, so the reason essentially is that it is not that easy to obtain them. You can't just like hop onto eBay.
Yes.
And as soon as you make the decision to no longer capture those animals, so important. And again, we've sort of talked about this, like the evolution of zoos and aquariums is something that's super important to remember. So things that happened 50, 60, 100 years ago, I don't think should be held against facilities to this day, right?
Yes.
We all make mistakes and things like that. And I think as a general
They've
rule,
evolved.
everybody can. everybody can pretty much agree that capturing healthy wild animals is not something that that we think that anybody should be doing. And I think that that's something that we can all start with and agree with. But back when the Vancouver Aquarium decided to collect these animals, well, actually, the way that it originally started was they were just looking for samples from an animal, and somebody had tried to kill a killer whale. Okay, so this is where,
good lord,
yeah. So this is actually this kind of brings into, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be welcome to my TED talk. So. Like nobody cared about killer whales. In fact, they were demonized and feared and hated before they were held in zoos and aquariums. And so somebody had tried to harpoon a killer whale, and the killer whale didn't die. And that's the story of how the first killer whale came to be at the Vancouver Aquarium. They decided, you know what? Instead of killing it, let's see if we can't keep it and and rehabilitate it and bring it back to health. And that's how that very first happened. And then people got to see these animals under human care, and then they started to care about them. They started to love them. They started to want to protect them because they were hunted to near extinction off the BC coast. And so so that's kind of how that whole thing got started. And so then years down the road, the Vancouver Aquarium decided we're not going to capture these animals anymore. We don't believe in it. We don't think that it's a good idea. And so once you make that decision, that makes your pool for receiving animals like that very slim. And then at the time, they only had one killer whale, Beosa, so in 2001, and they decided that rather than keep one of these animals, they wanted to make sure that animal had the opportunity to be with other killer whales, and so they sent her to a different facility. So that's the reason why the Vancouver Aquarium doesn't have killer whales. It's very difficult to get them. It's kind of the same reason why we don't have walruses, because it is very difficult to get them. So, that's essentially the reasoning behind that situation. I think that answers the question. I got off on a tangent, but I think that's.
But I think that's important to know, as you mentioned, and we discovered in the disclaimer that a lot of these organizations have evolved, and I'm quite sure Vancouver is one of them, from basically show and tell, collect the animals, to rehabilitation centers mostly, and research centers.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something that, like, every facility and every human, I mean, we should always be striving to get better, right? Nobody is perfect right now. And so that's what I love and I look for in facilities when I'm deciding if I want to visit or if I want to work for a place. I want to look for places that are trying to, they're not just content with what they're doing. They're trying to do it better than before. And that's kind of like, I think that's the trademark of this whole industry is like striving to do better for the animals, for the guests, for everything, and just making sure that we're moving forward on things like that. So I think the whole picture. It's very easy to go, oh my gosh, they used to capture killer whales. Yeah, they did, and then they went, you know what? I don't like this. This isn't right. We've changed our minds. This isn't the right thing to do. We're not going to do it anymore. And I think that's really valuable to admit. What this was not the right thing to do. We were coming from a different place, and now we've grown, and we're going to change the way we do things. So
it's basically the concept of that times. Throughout our years, there's always been things that have been okay to do in the 80s and no longer allowed to do now. Same with us as humans. There's a lot of that. That's what tweets. There's some tweets we could have sent 10 years ago that we definitely can't do anymore because we've learned and grown. But I think that's
and I think that even as humans, like, that's something that I find so valuable in people is, like, you get corrected on something and go, you know what? You're right.
Yeah, I made a mistake.
I'm going to do better now.
Yes, I've grown. But thank you for that information. Ray, you can move on to the next question.
Yep. Our next question is, what role do belugas play in the Arctic ecosystem?
So belugas are... Oh, they're so cute. But that's beside the point. So they are basically... they're kind of in the middle of the road. They are a predator, so they're eating a lot of things. They eat just about anything. They're very opportunistic. They can use echolocation to find things that are even buried in the sand. So they can eat things like clams. They can eat worms, like all kinds of things, in addition to fish. But beluga whales are not the fastest animals, as you have probably garnered just from like their sheer size and their shape. So they're actually eating a lot of those animals that live underneath the like the substrate. And so and then they are also an important part of the food chain. Like polar bears and killer whales, those types of animals eat belugas as well. So they're kind of the middle of the road, and they're a little bit more of a kind of a species who they are. I mean, every species up in the Arctic is very much affected by climate change, but with beluga whales, it's maybe a little bit. It's a little bit further down the line. So in the Arctic, what's happening is there's what's called sea ice algae, lives on the underneath of sea ice, and that's the only place that it lives. And that is the basis of the food chain in the Arctic. So things like smaller things like krill and stuff like that are eating that sea ice algae. Larger animals are eating that krill. Beluga whales are eating those larger animals. Larger animals even still are eating the beluga whales. Because of the lack of sea ice, you're experiencing a lack of sea ice algae, which is kind of exponentially affects you the higher you get up the food chain. So beluga whales are kind of an indicator of how the Arctic is doing, and something that scientists look for.
Wow.
And even, you know, there are some instances, as we know, like global warming doesn't just mean that everything's getting hotter all the time. It also means that things are becoming very unpredictable and can be very cold at times. And it's the unpredictability of it that's really sort of messing with animals. So there's been lots of instances where beluga whales have gone into areas that they would normally go for feeding, and the whole area has frozen over. And beluga whales need air, so they become trapped, you know, with their one tiny little air pocket, and can essentially like starve to death in certain areas. So there's a lot of that going on as well. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where they're sitting at in the food chain right now, and they are a vitally important species.
Question on this side is, among the different types of whales, which one is your favorite and why? But you mentioned orcas, but is there more to that?
I did. Well, you know, I've never worked with killer whales, so that's just always been like a dream of mine. But as far as like animals that I know personally, I do love beluga whales. Beluga whales are very interesting animals, and they are really sort of unique in the whale dolphin world. They have unbelievable vocalizations and all that cool stuff. But if I had to really pick, I worked with a false killer whale calf named Chester, and that's like an incredibly rare thing. I mean, there's probably like 12 people who've worked with false killer whales on the planet, and I get to be one of those lucky people. And he was an amazing animal, and super fun to learn from. And because there's not a lot known about them, it was a really, really interesting experience. And like the research that we did and stuff like that was super cool. And he had like just this amazing personality. I guess like babies in general just have like amazing personalities. But yeah, so I guess of the animals that I've worked with, the false killer whale was probably my favorite. And he was rescued, so I worked with him from just, you know, a few days after his rescue, when he was still itty bitty, and we had to be held up in the pool. And so yeah, that's probably my favorite.
There we go. False killer
and for
whale.
those of you who don't know, Evison's asking a false killer whale. So people, like, scientists who name these animals are like infuriating in some ways. So yeah, so they're it's called a pseudorca. And essentially they are the third or fourth largest dolphin species, depending on who you ask. And they were named that way because their skulls look very similar to that of a killer whale. But essentially they're not a killer whale. They're just another species of dolphin. They're not any more related to a killer whale than a bottlenose dolphin is. So, but that's they were named that way because of the shape of their skull. But it's kind of it's a bad name. It really is.
They got lazy both when naming killer whales.
It's not Evison. It's an actual dolphin species.
Yes, we've had this conversation before.
It's a disaster. It's a disaster. The nomenclature of these animals is just like out of control. And then half of everything is named like Stellar something because one guy like really just loved his own name or something. I don't know. So
that's a stellar sea lion. Like
it's a hot mess.
But the killer whale is technically a false killer whale, and so then the false killer whale is not actually a false killer whale. It's actually a proper what is going on world. But Rieha, can you ask the next question? My brain is bursting here.
Yeah. Okay, so we had a question, but I'm gonna save that to the end as a wrap-up thing.
Ooh.
But the next question that we had on this list is how big is a blue whale, and have you ever seen one?
Oh my gosh, no, I haven't, but that's bucket list. I've seen humpback whales. I've seen minke whales. I've seen gray whales. I've seen a lot of different species, but like sperm whales and blue whales are on my list, guys. I would love to. But blue whales are enormous. They are the largest mammal, largest like animal
ever
that ever lived. And you could I'm 5'8". I could walk through the aorta of a blue whale, which is the big vessel that leads out of your heart.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I could literally walk through it. So they're that big. So I've never seen one in real life, but it is bucket list. It's actually probably very difficult to fathom. It's kind of like thinking about how big space is. It's hard to fathom how big this animal can be. So, but I've never actually seen one in person.
Do you have any facts or know how many are actually left in the wild at the moment? Or is that
blue whales?
Yeah.
Oh, I honestly don't. You'd probably have a little bit more luck with Google on that one. I don't. Those guys are what's called baleen whales. So those are the animals that have like the big filters on the front of their mouth. They're filter feeders, which is different than the toothed whales, which confusingly are whales, dolphins, and porpoises, all fall under like the toothed whales category. Ugh, it's so confusing.
Again, the naming thing.
I know. So there really haven't been very many baleen whales in human care. So I know admittedly a lot less about them than about the toothed whales.
I'm quite sure would that not be almost impossible to keep a baleen whale?
They have SeaWorld rescued and released a gray whale, I believe.
Oh wow.
You could look it up, and they had to house it for a period of time because it was a young one and needed to get bigger and get stronger. And it's like one of the coolest things you'll ever see. But it's a very cool story, so I definitely recommend looking at that. It's the only time it's ever been done, and that they've ever been housed under human care and then subsequently been able to release an animal like that. Huge endeavor, very, very cool.
I'm sure,
so.
and I would assume that obviously with the orca tradition that SeaWorld would have had pools that are specifically massive to house them.
Yeah, they did have a habitat that was suitable, but obviously the intent was always to release that animal because you cannot like it would be very, very difficult to even a gray whale dwarfs a killer whale, so I think for when it was a baby, those were suitable habitats, but they always knew they wanted to make sure to get that animal back out into the ocean once it was healthy enough.
Nice.
So,
yeah. Just very quickly, did a quick Google and multiple confirmed there are 25,000 big, massive blue whales that still exist in our ocean. So if they were all removed, the sea level will probably drop.
Yeah.
How massive. Yes, moving on.
Yep, moving on. We have the next one is okay, so if you have whales and dolphins at Van Aqua, what are their stories?
So right now we only have one dolphin. And her name is Helen. She is a Pacific white-sided dolphin, which is a pretty rare species to find under human care. And she was caught in a fixed fishing net off the coast of Japan. So those fixed fishing nets are the ones that sit still. They're meant to funnel fish into a certain area, but if a dolphin gets trapped in there, causes the same problems that it does for fish, unfortunately. And so she had some injuries associated with that. Fishing line injuries are devastating to all animals, really. But in this case, her pectoral flippers were extremely damaged and had to be removed as part of her rehabilitation process.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, well, half of them, I should say. So she has these cute little, I call them her two lucky flips. She has some cute little nubs. And these don't really affect her in any way right now, but it did mean that she had to spend a lot of time under human care to heal from those injuries. And because of that, she quickly figured out that humans are a lot easier source of food than it is to find it yourself out in the ocean. And so she was deemed non-releasable by the government, and then we offered to provide her with a home. So, but we've had beluga whales, some of which were collected, some of which were born at the aquarium. And let's see, we did have several other Pacific white-sided dolphins who were rescued from very similar situations like that. Harbor porpoises also rescued as a very young age. They were abandoned or lost track of their mums or whatever happened. Something happened to their mom, and as a neonate, really like weeks old, unable to take care of themselves. False killer whale was the same thing. He was actually found stranded on a beach at a very young age. No one knows how he got there. No one knows why, but unable to take care of himself, obviously. So that's usually a rescue situation or born under human care, or some of the older animals, 50, 60 plus years old, were actually as part of that collection process that we talked about.
And just very quickly, the whales that are born under human care, obviously there's whales that are not to be released and anything like that. Is that still a practice that has been used to, well, I would hate to use the word manufacture, but create basically new whales for aquariums and that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, and it's definitely one of the issues that people are talking a lot about right now. But it's funny because people say, like, is it a practice? Like, yeah, they let the whales have sex at aquariums, and the whales love to do it. And it's not, so in most cases, this is done naturally, just like allowing the animals to breed naturally. It's a normal part of
to fraternize and go to dinner.
and they love doing it. And it's important to also note that animals that are stressed out or in some ways in a bad situation will not breed and will not reproduce. Like mothers' bodies will literally just not do it if they're in a situation where they don't feel like they have the chance at success, or that it would be a detriment to themselves. So I'm all about letting animals have sex at aquariums. I think that they should. I think that they love doing it. So when there are things like breeding bans put into place, I find this to be really ill-informed. And I mean, it'd be one thing to say we're not going to do artificial insemination, which even then, having calves having babies is something that the animals also really seem to enjoy. But I could see that argument for that a little bit more. But when you're having to prevent animals from breeding, you're talking about having to either do long-term hormones, which are untested. We do not know what kind of impact that can have on the animals. I mean, it's a lot of the same things that we're kind of going through with humans who are on long-term birth control and hormonal replacements. What's going on. We don't know how that's going to affect them in the long term. Oh, look, dolphin just pooped on screen. Have you guys wondered what that looks like? There you go.
Oh, on my side of YouTube is just sharing that now, so you guys are going to see that happen in a couple of seconds.
Yeah. Looks like a plane driving by, and kind of. Anyway, and let's see, where were we at before the
But
poo-poo?
dolphins having
Oh yeah, so you have to
relations.
either do hormonal replacement, or you have to separate into same-sex groupings, which is not normal, is not natural, and just deprives the animals of normal social interaction. So yeah, where possible, facilities are usually just allowing their animals to, providing them with the best possible environment and situation, and then if the animals breed, great. If they don't, well, that just is what it is. But yeah, I mean, I obviously, my personal opinion is that having these animals under human care is an awesome opportunity for them, for us, to learn about them, and to learn things that just are absolutely not possible out in the ocean. There's lots of science and studies that have been done that just absolutely could not have been done out in the ocean, and the things that we learn from them, I think, are invaluable. And having them under human care, I think, is the only way to get some of that information. And if they wanna do the dirty and have lots of little dolphin babies, then I'm all about it. But it is one of those issues right now that's kind of like coming to the forefront of things. So
would that also
we'll
not
see where it
be
goes.
dependent on whether or not they'd be able to sustain those calves? I'm quite sure. I mean, let me put it this way: would the specific well-equipped aquarium, when we're talking about established aquariums, not the aquarium that's built in someone's backyard that is not doing the proper things, talking about established aquariums, would they only let the animals breed if they knew that they could sustain that animal, or is there some things around there?
Yeah, well, no, of course, if they're going, like, we do not have the facility to have the breeding happening, which I think is what you're asking.
Yes.
Then responsible facilities are not going to do that. And you have to have, with whales and dolphins, you have to have a very specific setup, because there has to be the ability to separate animals, because when babies are born, it is possible that male dolphins or whales will come in and kill those babies in order to rebreed the females. So you have to have the ability to separate individual animals in certain instances, and so that requires a really state-of-the-art facility to do so. So there are facilities who choose to have all female groups or bachelor groups of dolphins, and because they know they don't have the facility, and other facilities who are breeding facilities who can house those types of animals. And so yeah, I mean, that's absolutely taken into consideration. But at the same time, like, I'm of the opinion that if you don't have the capability to house the animals and let them do their natural thing, then it might be worth considering not having them at all. Yeah, if you can maybe you should focus on some different species that you can house and give the best possible care and life to, and maybe just shift your focus a little bit. But yeah, again, also those are like decisions that are like far above my pay grade at the aquarium. But those are my personal opinions on it anyway.
I just want to quickly point out that, first of all, that dolphin that decided to crop dust looked like he was hitting the brakes. I've never seen that much poop in the water. And one of my wigglers pointed out here that the grey whale that was released was named JJ. Just pointing it out there. It was named JJ.
That's funny. I didn't know that.
I just googled it and I'm like, it's what name?
JJ. You have to look at the story. It's so cute. It's such a great feel good story.
Yeah, I have the link on Backview for later when this is over. But sorry, Rieha, we've got more questions from Rhea's side. I've taken up a bit of questions here. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we have quite a lot. So I mean, I know we are coming up on that hour mark, but we still have about like 18 more questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you guys. I'm fine to.
We might need to break this up into a part 2, but I mean, we will. At least everyone knows what they're looking forward to next week. But let's try and get through as many as we can, because this is an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question that we had is, do dolphins act differently like to people they haven't seen as much?
Yeah, absolutely. So dolphins and whales, they can tell us apart. And they do treat us differently. Mostly I see it usually kind of like dolphins will try to take advantage of newbies in my experience. They're like, this person doesn't know what in the world they're doing, so I'm gonna just do whatever I want. Yeah, so we do see that. They have people that they really, really like. They have people that are maybe not their favorites, just like humans do. And they, if you're gone for a long time and you come back, they really seem to notice. So yeah, they absolutely can tell the difference, and do have different interactions with different people, for sure.
Okay. Very question that popped up on this side. What is the largest difference between porpoises and dolphins?
Great question. So, dolphins tend to have that sort of banana-shaped or half-moon-shaped dorsal fin that kind of arcs a little bit. Whereas porpoises tend to have a very triangular dorsal fin. In general, porpoises are smaller. However, there are some dolphin species that are smaller than some porpoise species, so that's kind of like take it with a grain of salt. And then their head shape tends to be very different. So dolphins tend to have a little bit more of that elongated, in bottlenose especially, it's very prominent, that bottlenose. Whereas porpoises have very triangular shaped faces in general. But the only like 100% true way to tell the difference, which is not super helpful because you would never see it, or if you did, you were probably in a really bad situation, is to look inside their mouths. So their teeth are a different shape. Dolphins all have conical shaped teeth, so you can kind of like when you think of killer whale shaped teeth, those are the biggest like example. But yeah, but bottlenose have the same thing. They're just a little bit smaller. So, so conical shaped teeth is a dolphin, and porpoises have kind of like a spade shaped tooth almost. It's kind of, I don't know. Well, anyway, you can Google it again. But so porpoises' teeth are a different sort of shape. I'm trying to it's kind of a little bit like this. Helpful? Okay. So yeah. Those are the main differences between porpoises and dolphins.
Okay. Moving. Oh, that was a very interesting. That had a lot more information than I expected.
I hope that's what you always think about me, JJ.
Oh, of course, this is why we're doing this every week. It's very informative. If we want to move on to the next question on Rhea's side, please. Rieha? I believe we may have lost Rieha. Let me check here. Oh, she's indisposed at the moment, so let me quickly drum up another question. That's
okay. I think let's see. So Georgie here's saying, I know that one of the reasons that sea otters aren't allowed to breed in facilities is due to the pup being non-releasable. Blah blah blah. So if a dolphin and whale had a calf under human care, would naturally be solitary as an adult. What survival factors would mean released and not released? So, so whales and dolphins born under human care will never be released, or at least it's not possible right now. I don't want to say never because, again,
things
we're all
could
talking
change.
about we're all talking about the growth of facilities and perhaps, perhaps that is possible in the future. That'd be really neat. But right now that is not the goal of that type of thing. One thing that you can learn, we talked a little bit earlier on about doing beluga whale research on the mothers and calves at the Vancouver Aquarium, and things that were learned from that were then translated to moving up into the Arctic and doing research up there. And that was only possible because there were calves born at the Vancouver Aquarium. So if that had never happened, nobody would ever know any of that information. So there is a lot that you can learn by having breeding animals at zoos and aquariums, but it is also because, like I said, it is generally accepted as a rule that we do in North American zoos and aquariums, we are not capturing animals. So if that is the case, where are they going to come from? And so that comes from, from breeding programs under human care. Yeah. So if they're, that is essentially the only source, unless there are rescued non-releasable animals, of whales, dolphins, and porpoises under human care right now. So there isn't a release possibility as of right now, but maybe that'll change in the future. It's something that we could maybe work on. But yeah, hope that answers your question, Georgie.
Yeah, but you said that, and if I'm correct, that it's a North. Can I just say North American rule that you said that they no longer capture the animals?
It's actually law. But in addition to being law, before it was a law, zoos and aquariums said they weren't going to do it anymore.
Yes.
But yeah, zoos and aquariums do not capture healthy wild whales and dolphins.
Are you aware around the world if maybe there are institutes that still do that?
I know that there are. I don't know those. I don't know those specifically. But yeah, I know that a lot of places don't have the same rules and regulations and the same values. Not that those are any less values or anything like that, but just that their thoughts and the matter are a little bit different. So I mean, and honestly, I, as a marine biologist and a professional, I can actually understand the logic behind capturing animals, but I also understand why it is that we don't do it. So so there are reasons to do it. There are good reasons to do it, but do they outweigh the bad reasons? That's the question that we're always asking, and one that I feel weighs very heavily on not capturing those animals. But
and I'm sure you're referring to in terms of research versus entertainment.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And the things that we do learn from it, having animals under human care are invaluable, in my opinion. But I think that we can do it without capturing those animals. So I do want to talk a little bit about unless Rieha's back.
I'm back.
Oh, okay. Well, I wanted you to you probably already wrote it down, but Big Wildo here asked a really good question about this robot dolphins to replace dolphins in zoos and aquariums. And unless you have like a plan, I kind of want to talk about that a little bit.
Oh, no. That was actually pretty interesting to talk about.
Yeah, so this is something that has come up. Mechanical animals to replace real animals at zoos and aquariums. I do not, for the life of me, understand why this is a thing. Like, and maybe somebody can tell me, but like, why would anybody go see that? Because you're not, like, the reason that I think the reason that I go to zoos and aquariums is because I want to learn more about those animals. This is an opportunity that I would have never, ever, ever, and most people will never, ever, ever have the opportunity to see a wild dolphin or a wild polar bear or, a wild whatever, meerkat. Like, most people are never, ever, ever going to see that. So that's why you go, right? You go to see these animals and learn about them. In a capacity that is just not possible. And hopefully, a handful of people are unbelievably inspired by seeing these animals and walk away wanting to do something, wanting to change the world.
Yes.
And if this happens just like once a day at every zoo and aquarium in the world, imagine how many people like in a year are gonna go forth like inspired and are gonna change things for the planet. So
and study it and actually,
that's why I think having zoos and aquariums around is so important. And that's not even talking about the research and all of that stuff. That's literally just for guests coming to see the animals. So what I don't understand why anybody would ever go see a robotic animal. It's not the same. There's no. Yeah, I don't understand. I for the life of me, I can't figure out why this would possibly be a thing, and what would be taken away? You know, I mean, I guess maybe you could still like post information about what real dolphins are like, but you would know you're not looking at one.
You're not seeing it in its natural habitat, and actually, one of my chats actually mentioned, or it becomes something else like an amusement park, when as opposed to
and there's places for that, you know, and you know, there's wax museums and stuff, but ultimately, you know, you're not looking at the real thing.
And there you're going for specifically entertainment, not also education.
yeah, exactly. You're going to just like, oh, go look at like how weird that is, or you know, oh, it was superhuman like, or whatever. I mean, like, so this is something that's been raised as like as a solution, mostly by like, you know, armchair activists who are just like, well, why don't you guys just have robots? And we might as well just not have them then, because it's just not really. I don't understand. Yeah, I don't understand that argument at all, because it's not the same. People want to go to see these animals. You get to see, like, robots don't have personalities. Like these animals have personalities. Like it's really, you know. So for me, I think that's a really interesting question, because it is a very that's an up and coming thing, and it's something that people are talking about. And I just, for the life of me, I can't figure out. I would never go see it. Like. Just not interested.
I saw a video about it, about the whole concept of
and I'm quite sure, wouldn't it be more expensive in a way? And then it's like, oh, sorry, the power went out, you can't come to the aquarium today because all of our animals have stopped working. I mean,
I can't even imagine the logistics surrounding it. Like I can't even, like, yeah, that's not even, you know, do you have tracks, or how does, I don't even know. But in any semblance of the word, it's not the same. Yeah. I mean, and there are museums, and you can learn a lot from museums and stuff like that. And there are places for that kind of stuff. But I think that nothing can replace the wonder and the amazement and the learning that happens of actually seeing an animal under human care. You guys just got to see what dolphin poop looks like. Nobody knew what that looked like.
Now it looks like a smoke trail. You was hitting the brakes.
yeah.
But you mentioned something is like, I mean, we have an aquarium here, but it's so much more different emotionally. And even one of our wigglers just posted in my chat how inspiring it is and mindful it is to see an animal up front or close that you actually leave there with so much more questions. You know, it's like seeing a picture of your friend's dog versus you actually meeting the dog, and then you're like, oh my god, it's so cute. It's a very different experience, and
exactly. And you learn hungry, or you leave hungry for more, like more information. So
we had a very good comment here saying, seeing a real animal in proper care of humans inspires many to be mindful of the way we treat the environment, etc., in order to ensure the species thrive for years to come in the wild. Absolutely, because it's an emotional investment. It's not, you can't be emotionally invested in a robot unless you're looking at dinosaurs, but you know, you don't need to learn anything more about dinosaurs or their personalities beyond that, because they're gone.
And Wildo here has a comment about what about animals that have a very hard time in captivity, like great white sharks. Yeah, interesting point. For me, I just feel like, why not then just have an exhibit with like pictures like of the real animal. I feel like pictures of the real animal are more valuable than a robot who's probably not behaving in it at all the same way as a real great white shark would. And the fact that these animals are not housed at facilities doesn't necessarily mean they don't do well in captivity. It means that they haven't figured out how yet. So there will probably be a time in the future, and great white sharks have been housed at certain facilities with some success. It's just that the people haven't figured out how to do it yet. So it's something that that people are working on. So for me, I don't think there's any value in then having a great white shark exhibit with fake sharks in it. I think that there is value in having a big exhibit that maybe has some life-size animals and stuff like that, but to put it in water and like it just doesn't outweigh like the costs of doing that to me. I think have like a museum style educational exhibit, absolutely. But and most aquariums do that. There will be some parts of the, like, we have a big narwhal exhibit where we talk about it, and there's like a narwhal tooth on display and stuff like that. And we don't have narwhals, and so that's, I think that's awesome. Like, that's really educational, but I don't feel like there'd be value in having a robotic narwhal swimming around, like, other than it just being like kind of weird. I don't know.
It serves the same purpose
strange to me.
as a photo. We have a question here. What about whale sharks? Do you already have the chance to see them live, or have you ever seen a whale shark?
I have never seen one in real life, but they have them at the Georgia Aquarium. And this is another example of, previously everyone was like, you can't house whale sharks. The Georgia Aquarium has, like, I don't know, I think they have like 3 or 4 of them, and they're like thriving because they figured out how to do it. And it's now one of the only places in the world where you can actually go and see them.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and it's so cool. Yeah, it is. It's huge. It's a massive exhibit, and it's beautiful. It's so amazing. So yeah. I've never seen them. I would love to. That's another. But I have like my bucket list is enormous.
It's full of sea mammals and fish.
yeah, exactly.
Ray, you can carry on with your questions on your side.
The next one that we have here is about orcas. Why orcas sometimes don't consume their prey immediately and behave in a way that would be observed as cruel.
Because they are cruel. So they're smart, right? And just like any smart animal, you see this happen with. We see a lot of the great ape species do things that we would think are cruel. We see dolphins do this all the time. Dolphins seem to torture the animals before and they're just playing with it. They just they're very smart. Humans do this too, right? So there's this really strange. Not strange. I understand why it happened, and we kind of already talked about it with Flipper. But it's this idea that dolphins and whales are this amazing benevolent species who would absolutely rescue you if you're in the ocean. You got about a 50-50 chance they'll do the exact opposite of rescuing you in the ocean. So yeah, I mean, dolphins attack more people than sharks do every single year out in the ocean. That's just a statistic. It's just a fact. So yeah, it's the short answer is that sometimes they kill for fun, and just like your cats do, or things like that. So there's not an easy, like, awesome answer that I can give you, except for that because they are very intelligent, they do this thing. They will essentially what looks like torture animals and things like that. It's not fun to watch, but it is just part of being animals, and they are and humans too. We all have like those mean streaks in us. So yeah,
seems comes at the cost of being intelligent or having high intelligence. We start to oh, you know what, maybe I should play with this a little bit more. But I think, I just lost my train of thought there. But do you think that humans don't assist in the fact you just mentioned that dolphins attack more humans than sharks? But if a shark attack happens, it's all over the news. We never really have dolphin attacks.
No, because it's not the sexy opinion. It's super sexy. They're trying to paint.
Do you think humans are maybe trying to villainize sharks in a way because it looks like this villain?
Yeah. I mean, nobody's ever been. Well, to be fair, like, people have been. It doesn't happen very often at all, but people have been eaten by sharks. But nobody's ever been eaten by a dolphin. But yeah, I mean, like, for me, I'm far more afraid of dolphins. There's been times where I've been, boating out places and they're like, oh, let's go swimming. The dolphins are here. I'm like, absolutely not. Nobody's getting off this boat because I'm not going to like watch the bloodbath of this, of somebody being in the water with a dolphin. I would never, ever, ever swim with a wild dolphin. It's very, very dangerous. But yeah, I mean, we like the image we've painted of dolphins as this really benevolent, like
smiling
almost
creature,
supernatural
yes.
kind of entity.
Flipper.
And in the end, they're just animals, just like we are. And there are nice dolphins, there are mean dolphins. So, so yeah.
But you've even mentioned it earlier, which is removed, is that basically killer whales are dolphins. So why can't dolphins be as violent? I hate to use that word, but I mean like in the same personality.
And killer whales actually got their name because they were named originally, I believe, off the coast of South America, I would say, Spanish-speaking country. And so essentially what had happened is because in Spanish and in a lot of other languages, you put the adjective at the end.
Yes.
So they were calling them whale killers because killer whales, orcas,
Yes.
will kill other whales. So whale killer, but it was swapped around. So killer whales is the way that it, it might have been Argentina, Nora, you're maybe
Well
right.
done, English and Spanish translation.
Yeah. They are just animals. They're not some like, benevolent space alien that's been put on this earth to
Yes.
make the planet a better place. They're
Full of
they're
kindness.
dolphins. They can be mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I have actually seen dolphins hunting.
Is it
before.
scary?
Like, dude, when they come out of the water and and you're not expecting it, and you're just at the beach, that scares the shit out of you. I will not lie.
Oh yeah.
And
Okay,
you
so
just find out they're hunting a pack of fish, like
Yes.
a whole freaking school of fish, and they're just coming in as a hot pack of
Danger
dolphins.
and
Jesus.
hunger.
You can absolutely be injured by a dolphin. They don't have to bite you to do it. I mean, they're fast.
They've got that huge pointy snoot. They can blunt force trauma.
That's the biggest way that people are injured by them is like cracked ribs from just being rammed by these guys. So,
but I mean, the fact that the way that they hunt. I mean, I've seen some documentaries recently, like the way the dolphins circle fish and then they each take turns swimming and start to grab the fish.
Yeah,
That's
very, very
terrifying.
smart.
It's fascinating, but it's terrifying that they've learned how to kill and hunt.
Oh my gosh, if you watch like killer whales and the way they hunt, like specifically, well, there's several different types. They've all learned to do different things, but the ones that use like a coordinated swim attack to launch a wave that washes a seal off of an ice floe, that stuff is so unbelievable to me. So
it's fascinating that they
cool.
know how to use nature to their advantage.
Yeah. Big Willow's asking a really good question here. Big Willow's full of like really good questions today. So what can we do to help lessen ocean pollution, like aside from like the, everybody knows recycle, blah, 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 blah. I think recycling you should put at the very end of your list. We should really be reusing or just completely avoiding getting plastic stuff in general. And that's gonna really help. But I think more prominent for whales and dolphins is going to be finding really sustainable fishing techniques, not just so getting your fish from places that are doing like hook and line fishing rather than net fishing is going to be really, really important, not just because net fishing tends to just like decimate habitats, but also because whales and dolphins do get caught in fixed fishing nets or all types of fishing nets. That is, a serious problem for whales and dolphins. So more like ocean debris and making sure that if you're eating seafood, and eating seafood is totally fine, but just making sure that you're eating sustainable seafood, and you know where it's coming from, and you know the techniques that those people are using. So I think that's a good one.
I think.
Thanks for that question.
I don't know if I can bring it up, but isn't that what Ocean Wise is all about? The whole sustainable.
Yeah, Ocean Wise or
have a few other
the
organizations.
Seafood Watch from
Yes.
from California. There's lots of different types of places and lots of different resources that you can use. So it does take a little bit more effort, but if you can put effort into knowing where your seafood is coming from, I think that makes a really big difference.
I even think in this country, just to cover it, we actually have a sort of a new initiative that they supporting your local fishermen. So the people that actually go out there and fish, as you say, with hook and lines.
Yeah.
Because obviously they take that home and it really helps them from poverty, but you're not supporting an organization that is mass fishing. You're supporting a single fisherman that is actually being limited by the catch. And
shopping local, very important.
Absolutely. Shopping locally is the best way I think that anyone can. It's like we're talking about Stardew Valley. Don't support Jojo the supermarket. Support your local fisher.
Yeah, exactly.
It really helps. But that's a very good side question there.
Mm-hmm.
Ray, you can ask the next question. I don't know how many questions we got left on that list.
We still have a lot.
Oh my god. Are we going to need to have a part 2?
We might actually have to do a part 2.
Let's
I was going to actually say that if anybody was interested about the sustainable fishing, Monterey Bay Aquarium did a really good live Q&A thing about it.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, they explained a lot about it. Just bringing that because
Monterey Bay is the original Seafood Watch is probably your best bet. It's the most advanced.
I might post that link on our Discords if we can find that so people can actually watch that. I think let's take on 3 more questions. And then I do believe if we all agree that we might need a part 2 to this topic from the amount of questions that have come through.
No, that's great. I love the questions. They've all been really awesome questions and all really good thinking and all really respectful. So I think that this is going really well.
Yes.
Well, especially since we got the weird ones out of the way at the beginning. Okay, our next. So this is going back to what you were talking about, but it's why do whale and dolphin species sometimes show humans a great act of compassion when humans are facing potential danger?
Yeah. This is so hard because I really don't want to ruin everybody's everybody's gonna walk away from this just absolutely hating dolphins. I don't actually think that 99.9% of the cases where people are like, this dolphin saved my life, this blah blah blah, this blah 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 happened to me. I think if a legitimate dolphin behaviorist or marine biologist actually looked at it, that would not be what was happening.
Maybe it was accidental.
Perhaps, yeah. I think this is the perception because of what we want to believe. It's called confirmation bias. Yes. If anybody's got the psychology terms, but basically people really want to believe this. They really want to believe this about dolphins. And I'm not saying that it hasn't ever happened. Perhaps there have been times where dolphins have been like, hey, I just really want to, I don't know, give this human this fish that I don't know, whatever. But it is most of the time, people who are saying they had these experiences, they're not animal behavior experts, right? And it really should be left to the experts to sort of analyze these types of things. And it's very hard for us to look at a situation and go, okay, here's actually what happened, what literally happened, and without drawing the connection of it must have been because the animal loves me or whatever. Yes. Short answer is I don't think we can get into specific instances too if people want to. And I don't always think that when people have been attacked by dolphins, it's maybe dolphins were playing with them, but play for a dolphin can be very, very rough. So I'm not the exact opposite goes goes true as well, right? So sometimes when people say they were attacked by dolphins, well, there might have been something else going on, and that might have not been what was happening. But basically, I think that the vast majority of human-animal interactions, and especially when it comes to animals that we're really biased about, are actually just very misunderstood, and people are not getting the right impression of what's actually happening.
I think you hit the nail on the head, especially when about dolphins hurting humans. There's been 2 major incidents with killer whales or orcas that were directly as a result of basically the orca basically a school bus playing with a rag doll. It's like, I want to play with this. Oops, it's dead. Sorry. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's where humans have lost their lives.
We did get this question a little bit earlier on. I saw it breeze by on my chat about more specifically, obviously, Don Branshaw is a trainer who was killed at SeaWorld, and this is something that people love to talk about. And I think it is important to talk about, but I want you to like critically think about this for 1 second. Like, I would love to see a statistic, because I bet it's in the hundreds, of how many farmers died today working with their cattle.
Yes, even cows and bulls.
Yeah, or how many horse owners died today because they were kicked by a horse?
Yes.
I know it's not, it's a non-zero number, and that's just for today. And one time this happened,
and it's not sensational.
In all of the years that those animals have been working with humans. So that doesn't mean it's not important, and SeaWorld did make a lot of changes because of what happened.
Yes.
But it when you think about that track record, that is an unbelievably safe track record.
Yes.
For working with such a huge and potentially dangerous animal that is in comparison with any other profession in the world, that would be considered an enormously positive statistic. But for some reason, not for some reason.
I think mainly because it was caught on camera, and it was already starting with that. And that is one story that I do know very well of, the misinformation about the hair in the whale's mouth, which was a complete insult to Dawn herself, as if she was unprofessional. It was just an incident that happened. And an incident where that whale had been involved in another sort of similar, where it was just almost being playful, and it got carried away. Again, this is a school bus playing with a rag doll, but I really think that was a sensationalized. And as you said, the industry changed immediately after that.
Changes were made, and but it's something that everybody wants to remember one specific thing about it. But it is really, like, in my book, like, wow, if you only had one really awful incident in hundreds of years, that would normally be considered an unbelievable good track record.
It was obviously because, as you said, because of the animal, the history around it. This was a trainer that had been working with the whale for almost years. She was 40 when this happened. She'd been doing this for 20 years, and unfortunately, it was wrong day, wrong time. And just to let everyone that within that story, no one decided that whale should have been euthanized or anything like that. They confirmed that was just a whale being a whale, or killer whale being a mammal.
Well, they are dangerous animals, and really, zookeepers, like, even when you think about the number of zookeepers that have been killed by tigers or lions, and no one's calling for the end of having lions under human care, or not no one, but very few people. So it's one of those things that just, again, it's something that we always encourage on this channel, which I love about it, is just like critically thinking, like, just think about the facts, and then start thinking a little bit outside the box, and drawing your own conclusions.
And as you mentioned before, do your own research after this. Go and research many different avenues, and hopefully your brain will piece the right information together for you to say, okay, this is actually what makes sense. Almost bringing up the Dawn situation. That was definitely worthwhile speaking about. I'm sure everyone's going to go Google now, like, oh, what happened? But as you mentioned, I do want to point out that we mentioned it before, that organization has changed since. So there's been a lot of changes that they have done since.
Yep. Just like any good organization, you don't just go carry on the way that we were. You make changes immediately.
Yeah, well, this plane crashed, but let's not fix it. It's changes do happen. Going back to Rieha?
Well, I think we should wrap up here.
Yeah.
We do still have more questions, but I know it is getting late for you, JJ.
But
So
you had the
I
question that you were going to...
reopened.
Yeah, there was a question you were going to end on or something.
Well, the question I was going to end on actually could be saved. We did touch on it a bit already. And it's mostly just, conservation. How can we help protect the ocean and the animals in the ocean?
Oh, okay. We kind of touched on that
Yeah,
a
we
little
did
bit.
kind of cover that.
We'll definitely be, posting some links that were suggested today on stream and make sure that we get some of that information out there. I think that's a good thing to do.
Okay.
And for anyone who still has questions, I reopened the form so you can still submit more questions that maybe you didn't ask yet. And we'll be continuing on next week, Monday, with the rest of the questions that we have listed here today.
Yes, and I would like to point out in those questions, try post your questions as soon as possible, because also there is a small amount of opportunity that enough research can be done behind those questions as well. But KP is very skilled to answer these questions right up front anyway, but it's been very entertaining.
But also, a lot of this stuff is just my opinion. I'm not always right about everything. So I'd also, just like everything on the show, do not take my word at gospel. I hope that you always do your own research. But yeah, always happy to answer questions.
It is a point of view, but not a final point. But as KP said, I hope you guys take this. Please join us next week. We will continue this topic and take this, do your research, and become smarter. But KP, you're going to be streaming after this?
Yeah, we're gonna play some Oregon Trail. It's always a fan favorite. So.
Oh, yes.
Oh, before we end off, I just want to clarify: are we gonna move it up back to 11?
I don't know. I guess maybe what we'll do is we'll
put a vote.
Have some put a vote on our Discord or whatever and have people weigh in a little bit because I want to do whatever is going to be best for everybody. So so maybe we'll do that. Just
to keep everyone up to date who joined late, obviously United States and a lot of countries have daylight saving times, so we didn't really change the time.
Fortunately,
the clock moved an hour earlier, so we're planning to move the show an hour earlier, so it's always at 11 a.m. Joey time. But please post in our Discord. We'll put a poll up of what you want. Do you want to change the time, or do you want to keep it as it is at the moment? Whichever will be easier for you guys. But
right.
Thank you very much for joining. Goodbye, everyone. And please pop over to KP's stream or Karen going to watch the Otters, one of the two. But the Oregon game is quite fun, especially. Are you going to be taking in the users by name, or will they be able?
Yeah. So people who are around can participate and run the Oregon Trail and hopefully survive. It doesn't. Nobody survives very often, so we'll see what happens.
No, not me again. I lost my leg or lost my toe. And then I died. But thank you very much, guys. We'll catch you next.